Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is December 12th. And today we're going to start out by talking about DEXs. And across the DeFi landscape, we've seen the emergence of three major players in the DEX space. Uniswap, which has become the really, I don't want to say incumbent, but they've grown to be catering ever more towards institutional players and off-chain liquidity with the deployment of Uniswap X and the soon-to-be Uniswap v4. We have Curve, which is the social layer of DeFi, connecting protocols with VEFXS, or sorry, VCRV, and Convex and everything else that has grown through the Curve ecosystem. And then also Balancer, which really has used its position to experiment and deploy cross-chain and innovate the AMM in ways which have been like novel and really great for overall development in the AMM space. So for those who don't know and haven't looked at Balancer at a deeper level, they've really got some interesting products that we've seen deployed over the past couple of years. The boosted pools, which virtualized the AMM and allowed for liquidity to be sourced out to different DeFi protocols like Aave, so that the unused assets inside an AMM could earn yield. Also, the liquidity bootstrap pools, which allowed for the creation of like new pools and even protocol pools, which are creating programmable liquidity for protocols that they can use. And so today we have on Fernando, who is the CEO and co-founder of Balancer Labs. Fernando founded Balancer several years ago, along with Nikolai Mashugin and Mike McDonald in 2019. It's so far ago; it's already 4 years now. I can't even believe it. The DeFi summer is almost 5 years. 5 years past, or 3 years past now, but we're closing up on 5 years soon. And it's just incredible the amount of development that we've seen in that time. And so today we got myself, we got DeFi Advisor, and we also have Dio as well too. What's going on, Dio? How you doing?
Doing great, guys. Thank you. Looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
And so Fernando, what's up, man? How you doing? Welcome to Leviathan.
Doing good. Thanks for having me, Sam. You guys.
So we saw a big announcement last week, which is why that you're here today, which is for Balancer v3. So I've always been pretty impressed with the deployments that you guys have had. I've mentioned a couple of the novel AMM types that you all have put out over the last couple of years. And now we have v3 on the horizon.
Exactly. Yeah, we're excited. Like we've been always kind of having a specific focus around enabling other teams to innovate and kind of being a platform for other AMMs to be built on top. So Balancer v2 is a very kind of flexible way people can just define the invariants that they want to use for their pools. They can be very kind of creative in ways to create their own AMMs using Balancer's infrastructure, connections, and SDK, and the way we kind of interface with aggregators, because it's super hard for a new AMM like being built from the ground up to already be seen by 1inch and by Matcha and CalSwap. And we kind of have this common interface that those new AMM types have to obey to follow, to be using our vault, and then our vault is being connected by all those other entities like aggregators. They're so crucial for any AMM to be successful, right? You need to have flow to have volume. So yeah, that is kind of Balancer's focus has been for Balancer v2 and still going to be for Balancer v3.
Well, can we talk about the evolution real quick of Balancer? So when you guys first launched, it was really cool because y'all had this like way of creating new AMMs that you could put up to like 8 assets in there. I remember.
Exactly.
And I thought that was pretty novel at the time. It was almost like creating these like little index products where you
Exactly.
could, yeah. And so,
Exactly.
and then you went on to the Bouncer V2, where you had all these other cool deployments, like I mentioned in the intro, like the boosted pools and liquidity bootstrap pools, also these protocol pools as well too. And now we're at V3. So maybe you could talk about like the mindset within the team about about this 4-year period that you guys have existed and have launched new products. Like, what's gone into going from that V1 into V2 and now V3?
Yeah, so V1 was really opinionated. It was like simply like a Uniswap pool, but with more than 2 tokens and any arbitrary fee. So you could create, like a little ETF or whatever kind of basket of assets that kept the same percentage, and you could set the fee and change the fee over time. You could also change the weight. So yeah, it was kind of our first version, and I think it was very interesting. It was used by some interesting projects for their token launches already. And then we realized that whenever you had some more complex trades, you would have to kind of hop between two pools or 3 pools and do more complex operations. So we created this singleton, what Uniswap v4 is going to use, and they call singleton. We call it the vault, right? So there's a lot of like cool things.
For people that don't know, the singleton contract essentially puts all the assets that are contained within the protocol within the one contract. So
Correct.
like with the Uniswap v2 contract, you're creating new pools for every single pair that you're making, right? Like each asset pool is separate from each other. Same on Curve as well too. All those pools are separate. But with Balancer in the V2, you guys had a singleton pool, which is now being widely used by a lot of other protocols. Uniswap is going to use this for their V4 deployment, where just all the assets go in, and it leads to greater efficiency for swapping.
100%. Yeah, a lot of people are scared, like, oh, my money is kind of commingled and together with other people's money. If someone's hacked, my money is also gone. It's not really that way, right? It's everything is accounted for internally, but it's, as you said, Tim, a lot more efficient. So you can do multi-hop trades, and then at the end, just take the token in and send the outcome of the like multi-hop swap. So yeah, it's a lot more efficient. It has the challenges of like contract bytecode size, because like all of a sudden you have everything in one contract, so you need to use some libraries. Recently saw a tweet by Hayden like complaining about the limit of 24 kilobytes for contract size. So there are some challenges, but I think it's a superior model, and Uniswap going after that with their V4 is to me a good sign that this is the right way, and we're going to do that the same architecture in V3, Balancer V3.
Yeah, they say that what is it? Imitation is the highest form of flattery.
100%. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things in V4 that we are already using in Balancer V2.
Yeah, it's really cool to see the growth and the way that you guys have been able to enter these different markets. So when looking at V3, what are some of like the key performance metrics and ideation that you're building around for this upcoming deployment?
Yeah, so we're doing like improving vastly Balancer, in my opinion, on 2 different levels, like the end user level, people who are actually adding liquidity, doing swaps, but also the developer level, like all the teams that are building interesting innovation like LVR mitigation, auctioning rights to trade with pools at 0 fee, for example. We're talking to a few different teams there. So we're kind of making it easier for teams like Gyroscope Finance. They just launched their GYD stablecoin like just last week, and it's already like a nice success, and has been in the making for 2 or 3 years, and it's all built on top of Balancer. Teams like Cron Finance, who implemented TWAMPs, which is like a paper that Paradigm published a couple of years back, and these are all things that we're going to make a lot easier on V3. And we're already working with those other teams to launch Balancer V3 with a lot of those innovations already. Like our idea is to launch our like main pools with TWAMs if everything goes well. So you kind of don't have the chicken and egg problem of TWAMs. Like TWAMs are very specific pools that need to have some liquidity so that the big swaps can kind of go through that pool. But like TWAMs with Chrome Finance, they have been very successful, but they pretty much created pools just for a big trade by a DAO. Like Nouns DAO did a big trade to convert staked ETH to RETH. So we created a pool to enable that. The idea is that Balancer V3's pool will be also like offering TWAMs on top of the normal swap. So it's going to be extra fees for LPs because the TWAMs are going through those pools. And it's going to be super easy to do large trades with very little slippage because you're using the same pools that other LPs are doing to do normal swaps, right?
So just to like, for people that don't know what a TWAM is, it's a time-weighted automated market maker, and essentially what it is like, let's say that you have a lot of ETH, or you have a lot of USDC and you want to buy a lot of ETH, and you want to do it over a fixed time period. The way that it works is that the order that you place essentially becomes virtualized, and so it's always pushing the price of whatever the AMM is up just a little bit, not block by block, but almost like infinite. There's like infinitely amount of space between the blocks where the price is rising.
Continuous.
Continuous. Yeah. And so the order essentially pushes the AMM pricing, virtual pricing, a little bit higher over and over again. And arbitrageurs will come in and arbitrage that away eventually.
That's right. And interestingly, Sam, the same idea applies for LBPs, which have been very successful. They did like over $1 billion of volume so far with big projects like Illuvium and many others. But the limitation there is that like the pool is going down in the price, offering people like kind of going down until there is price discovery and people start buying, and that kind of bumps the price up again. The difference with TWAMs is that you can have many different trades like in different directions that they kind of counter each other. So if someone is selling a bunch of ETH, someone is buying a bunch of ETH, those trades are just canceled out, and the tokens are actually being kind of changing hands in a very efficient way on chain that does not require constant updates of the state of the pool. That is like the finest math, and if you look at their code, it's amazing. But it's really like very simply avoiding updates and arbitrages every time, with lots of concurrent trades that go in different directions and cancel each other out. It's kind of similar with like CowSwap batching trades and then doing coincidence of once, and then avoiding price impact because people want to trade in different directions. You just match them. But over time, that is how I see TWAMs, which is pretty exciting in my opinion.
I wanted to go back and actually, you brought up LVR, which is loss versus rebalancing. And this has been I'd say like at the more technical and advanced end of issues for market makers who are wanting to deploy capital into markets. And so there's only so much capital that market makers have. They have to split it usually between like a centralized exchange where they're using a CLOB format, like a central limit order book. And then they also have to deploy capital into AMMs as well too. And the research has shown that I don't want to look. I think the AMMs work great for what they do, but they do have limitations in how the kind of naive structure of like a V2 Uniswap V2 contract was built, and then even some of the later contracts as well too, where in a centralized exchange, market maker can essentially like widen their spreads, or they can shift capital in a way that responds to markets literally on a thousandth of a second or even faster than that, right? But with the AMMs, because of the lack of dynamic fees, because of all these assets being custodied, there's been research that has shown that AMM LPs don't make enough in yield versus other areas that would justify them to put capital in. And so one of the big research, and I guess this is what you guys have been working on as well too, is like, how can we increase fees for AMM LPs? so that it becomes competitive to a SEX-based club, or like gets close to it, so that we can attract more liquidity on chain.
100%. That is a very active area of research within Balancer. There is a few ways we've been experimenting already with solvers and like CalSwap, Fusion, that with the intent space. An option is for you to have a discount for solvers that have good flow orders. So you know that those orders are like signed by usually users, because they don't have any guarantees of being executed next block. There's no auction like bidding process, like I want to pay more gas prices to get this in. No, you just put an intent on CalSwap or Fusion or UniX, and then those orders, it's not guaranteed. They're good flow. They're actual trade intentions instead of arbitrage, which is just kind of extracting value from LPs. So giving those guys a better deal makes so that they will naturally have an advantage over bad flow or toxic flow, as we used to call. So this is a way of, like, working with solvers and intents. We are also like studying some interesting alternatives, like letting some agent like a solver trade with a pool with 0 fees. Only they can do that, and all the other guys pay 0.3 or 1%. And to have that right, they have to pay to LPs like some sort of medallion or some rent, like, you know, any like auction that allows them to have that right. And they will, like, if markets are efficient, they will pay a little bit below what they're extracting in LVR, like giving back the LVR to LPs through different ways. Like, you could donate into the pool proportionally to the LPs, or you could do like add those incentives to the gauge of the pool. In case of Balancer, it's really easy because we have fungible liquidity. It's different from Uniswap, where you have like active LPs in the range. So yeah, there's a few ways you can do that, and it's super exciting. Like there's a lot of research going around, like builder, proposer, kind of all those bids and how those actors are kind of aligning and centralized and Swave, and it's definitely an interesting area. And I agree with you, Sam. Like, at the end of the day, LPs have been losing money, and we want to change that, right? We want to make sure that there is some external knowledge that gives back the value of that stale price of AMMs, as opposed to what's been happening until today. Like, the price is just there. The first guy that pays more, and then that goes eventually to the validators of Ethereum, because at the end of the day, you're paying them to like put your transaction first, and that is not good for LPs.
Yeah, and you guys have really been at the forefront of trying to solve this. I mean, I mentioned the boosted pools before, but that was really the first instance where you saw, like, in an AMM, you have a lot of assets that are being custodied in a contract, right? And really, they're underutilized because you only use maybe 10 to 20% of those assets to swap on the curve at any one time, and the rest, the 80% that's just sitting there, is just dormant and not really doing anything. And so the boosted pools were the first way that you were able to extract the assets out of the contract and then deposit them somewhere else where they could become productive. And then we've seen other protocols like Frax, who is coming out with the Borrow AMM soon, which is going to create lending markets for those assets. So there's a ton of innovation that's happening there about, like, how can we generate yield on those unused assets. And
this is something I'm excited about with V3 too, Sam. We, like, the main challenge is that, and we solved this with Balancer V2 with boosted pools, and we had an unfortunate security incident that, thankfully most people withdrew their funds, and not a lot of funds have been lost, thankfully. But it's complex things that we're building, and that kind of was very positive. Like, the market liked it a lot. Lots of lending protocols were using it. So we know it's something people want, and we're working to make it even better with V3, simpler, 100% boosted, so that with V2 we had like this idea of a little bit of, let's say, DAI, most of a DAI, so that trades would be able to use that little DAI to make it cheaper. So the biggest challenge is if you have everything lent out to Aave, every swap someone makes because they want DAI, you have to go to Aave and unwrap or wrap, depending on the direction. That costs a lot of gas. We think we have solved this problem in a very elegant way and are working on it. So the idea is like we're going to have 100% boosted pools whose swaps are also cheap. So it's going to be comparable to normal swaps, but still have 100% of the assets being like capital efficient. And I'm super excited about that kind of coming out to V3. And that is one of the innovations I would put at the level of like end user kind of innovations, because this is going to have a real impact. It's going to be super easy for anyone to create a pool with boosted DAI, and have those benefits.
Very cool. Well, we're all looking forward to this. What's the timeline for V3?
Yeah, so it's always like I don't like to kind of
I understand the product cycle is always like
yeah, there's like it's hard to make commitments, but we're expecting Q2, so we want to have V3 out by Q2 next year.
Very cool. Well, we also have on Kirill from Stakewise here. They just deployed a pool as well too, just the other day for their V3, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But it's gotten pretty large actually in the past couple of days. So great to see that you guys are working with a bunch of different protocols, and we're really excited for V3 to come out.
Thank you, and yeah, nice to show around, Kirill, and yeah, very excited with our partnership, and things are looking good. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on today. We're gonna hop over to Stakewise now. Kirill, it's great to have you here,
guys.
Yeah, Fernando, thank you for being here as well too.
Thanks, Fernando. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Exciting V3. I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely.
Thank you, Neil. Bye, Kirill.
Yes.
Bye, Sam. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. All right, so Kirill, welcome. So we'll just start. Let me throw you here in the hot seat here in the big. How do I switch this around? It's not letting me switch. 1 second. Okay, here we go. So over the last year, we've seen almost 12 million ETH that's been staked as LSDs, 26 different variants, according to DeFi Llama, as I checked this morning.
Wow.
The LSD market's like really competitive, and everybody is competing for this market share. The incumbent Lido is currently sitting at 77%, 0.28%. I checked this morning, and is creeping up on the 33% of all ETH staked, which has raised questions about decentralization and the security of the network. Lido has a pretty big start as the incumbent, as new DeFi projects pretty much always integrate their assets first because they have the most market share. Lido staked ETH gets first access, such as the recent deployment of the Blast 3 of 5 multisig that we saw a couple of weeks ago, along with FX protocol that we had on with and DeFi Advisor is working with the Aladdin DAO. And so the remaining 23%, the competitors in the LSD space have to optimize their services to separate themselves from the incumbent, the king of LSDs at the moment. Rocket Pool is optimized for decentralization. Frax is optimized for liquidity, and others are optimizing for like MEV boost or cross-chain liquidity. And really, up until now, people have been optimizing, but it's not really been able to break the monopolization of Lido in its top spot, which has raised concerns over the long-term health and security of ETH. Obviously, we're still like really early in this market, and it's we have a long way to go, and the space is hopefully wide open as we look into the future to take some market share away from Lido and build some really new and innovative pools. So, Kirill, welcome to Leviathan. It's great to have you here. And so I guess we can start with that question, which is like, with the deployment of Stakewise V3, what are you guys optimizing for? What's the path that Stakewise is taking when it comes to Ethereum staking?
Yeah, well, first of all, Sam, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Secondly, I think this was a great introduction into the conversation. So again, thank you for thoughtfully diving into the topic. When it comes to Stakewise Be Free, I believe we essentially have like a very similar view on the market structure to yours. The incumbents continue holding a large share of the market, and in order for newcomers, or at least like smaller counterparts, to I guess grow in this market, you really need to find like a differentiating option, something like to optimize for, like you expressed it. So what I may add to essentially your introduction is that what we have seen on the LST front is essentially kind of a lack of innovation. So, despite the fact that there are many alternatives being launched, most of the innovation comes down to essentially having a different node operator set with the LST that's a pretty similar one to all the existing alternatives out there, which means that each LST needs to attract its own liquidity. It needs to find its own integrations, and in the end, it's kind of like a dogfight between all of the smaller sort of LSTs. All the while, the incumbents are kind of staying at the top. So we've observed this phenomenon from the sidelines. We kind of also anticipated it, and we also see that these kinds of dynamics, they actually create like a centralizing force on Ethereum, because, well, frankly, controlling node operator sets in your protocols, like Lido does, for example, leads to a vector of centralization. And unfortunately, the kind of scaling ability of protocols like Rocket Pool, for example, is a little more complicated in this front. So what Stakewise's essentially response to this is that, well, if liquid staking is so popular, but at the same time we're kind of centralizing Ethereum while using it, why don't we create an LST that can be accessible from any node, so that you wouldn't need to go to, for example, Lido to use your stake in DeFi, but rather you could be running your own node, or you could be staking with like your own community kind of node operator, or be a solo staker, just like operating on your own, or just essentially pick the terms on which you stake, all the while having access to an LST that you can use for DeFi activity. And so we kind of arrived at the idea of Stakewise Be Free, where we have a fungible LST that can be minted against a stake on any node. So whether you're a solo staker, whether you're a staking company, whether you're a wallet or an exchange, if you have ETH staked on your nodes, you can make it liquid with Stakewise's OSETH token. And the only prerequisite is that the validators are launched through a smart contract, a set of smart contracts that we call a vault. A vault is essentially like a mini staking pool that you pick nodes for. You control a lot of logic internally, like fees and distribution of fees, and which operators you have in there yourself or others. You can have DVT in there, just like out of the box. You can have custom MEV sort of strategies and logic. So as much sort of innovation as you can offer to yourself, or rather use yourself or offer downstream, you can use it on the side of vaults. And then no matter how much stake flows through these vaults, it can always be made liquid with OSETH. And so this is really kind of our innovation. We allow permissionless access to an LST without any kind of collateral requirements on the node operator side. And we see that this model not only kind of is more conducive to creating a decentralized network, is also something that gives people more flexibility to participate in staking kind of on their own terms. They can create bespoke staking solutions. So, for example, people can move away from Lido to stake specifically with like smaller operators who most often are of the same quality, if not better, while preserving access to the same liquid staking opportunities and like farming and soon Eigenlayer and also lending. We expect this to be available already late December, early January. You can have.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
So Eigenlayer, we actually just published something on Flywheel this week. I wrote a piece about that where the deployment of Eigenlayer really is pretty incredible when you think about running a validator, where like as the validator, you're essentially going to be able to lend your ETH security to these AVSs, these actively validated services. And in return for that security, you'll make an additional yield on top. So there's going to be a huge diversity of different clients that are running through Eigenlayer. We could think about thousands or even tens of thousands of different AVSs, which are going to be wanting to use a portion of that ETH through restaking to secure their networks. And so what that means is that as a validator, there's going to be a ton of different options outside of just like MEV boost or rewards or infrastructure, which will allow you to like raise the total amount of yield that comes through your validators. And this means that like in addition to the 3 to 5% that you would make on average with E3 with e-staking, there's the potential to make a whole heck of a lot more with Eigenlayer AVSs. I mean, in theory, you could have I don't know, maybe 10, 20, 50% extra yield that comes through those validators through Eigenlayer. And what that means, and I think it's specifically in your context, is that there's going to be a large demand for these services, but not everybody's going to be pursuing the same AVSs. And so through Stakewise, you'll essentially have the ability to plug into a validator which you think has the right slashing conditions, is supporting the right protocols, and is essentially passing back that yield from those AVS services back to the e-stakers. And you'd be able to do that at a granular level with the individual pools.
Yeah, so essentially the midterm goal is exactly to arrive at this kind of solution. So since we're currently kind of trying to make Eigenlayer available to our users ASAP, plus Eigenlayer have their own roadmap to execute on, we're starting off with the integration of just the LST as a asset that people can restake in the in Eigenlayer, and then I guess consequently choose the AVSs they would like to support with that LST. But ultimately, the end game is precisely like you mentioned: be able to support the validator that people see as the most fit for a particular AVS, and for the vault operators to choose explicitly the AVSs that they're going to support, all the while having a token that represents restaked positions. So essentially, what are they called these days? Liquid restaked tokens. Yeah, lots of terminology being thrown around, but yeah, the idea is to make sure that people keep as much capital efficiency as possible without risking, the blow up of AVSs or the network, or like the token itself in the secondary market. So juggling these things takes time. I believe over time, we at Stakewise will essentially arrive at the moment where you can have full flexibility with what AVS you support through which vault, and mint and LST on top. But for now, we're starting off with being able to choose a node on which you're staking, minting an LST against your stake, and then putting it in Eigenlayer, which is kind of similar to supporting this from the very node that you've chosen, but perhaps on the kind of liquidity side, on the liquid restaked position side, not as advanced as it could have been. So taking small steps at a time.
How would it work with the marketplace, right? I'm browsing to the different vaults. Looks great, and it's like, for example, Sensei Node, which offers like 9.9%, and other ones there's different percentages of yield, because I think every pool can select like their own configurations, and
That's right.
every pool will mine a block or not, right? Like it's kind of random and luckiness, right? What
Yep.
about the risk? So let's say the Sensi node now offers 9%. Let's say there's a big exit from there and they don't have their exit queue set up correctly, or one of the node goes down. How is that risk separated in the different nodes? Because there's only one LSD, liquid staking derivative token, and in the
Yeah.
future, or an LRT. But it's
Yeah.
like there's only one version of that, right?
Yeah.
That risk is basically spread. If you hold the Stakewise LSD, OS ETH, that's basically holding a percentage in ETH in each node, or is that isolated, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So to maybe stop short of discussing this on like the restaking side first, just
Yeah,
to
similar
explain.
for restaking, right? Like if you
Yeah.
have restaking, you probably get OS RETH, for example, I assume. But yeah.
Yeah, well, let's leave that aside for a second, because it might just be too confusing. We still don't know how the AVSs are going to work exactly, so it's still quite some time for us to figure out that part. But when it comes to just minting an LST from any of the vaults and then this LST being fungible, the idea is that if you choose a node on which you're staking and then you mint an LST, then you're assuming the benefits, which means essentially the network rewards that this node is earning, this vault is earning, and also the risks that this vault is carrying. So any slashing, if it happens, it actually affects your stake because you've put ETH on that node. Now, what doesn't happen is if I minted this LST from another vault, I do not get affected by the slashing on your node. And I only partially have a claim on your yield. And the way that it works is that we require the LST to be over collateralized, which in practice means that you cannot make 100% of your capital liquid. Only 90% of it you can make liquid. So in the end, for the LST, we create at least a 111% collateralization, where the buffer is used against essentially any kind of penalties or slashing on the nodes in our marketplace. And so if one of them does get slashed or one of them does receive penalties, then it's people who are staking at that particular node that are going to take this risk. So they've provided this extra collateral and some of it is going to be burned. Naturally, like it would be with any kind of staked position in any other protocol. It's no different in that regard. But at least the holders of the LST, whether they bought it on the market or whether they minted it from a vault that did not have any penalties or slashing, they're not going to be exposed to this risk. At least, under certain network conditions, I believe we have enough collateral to cover for roughly 2% of the network being slashed simultaneously, which is a lot of validators historically. I think it's safe enough. Yeah, this is the logic.
Okay, and then operator, like the assumption is like the operators don't want to mint their own LSD. They kind of want to use Stakewise to mint their own LSDs, because minting your own LSDs is really difficult. So they come to Stakewise to spin up their own nodes, and then get extra ETH into their nodes by providing that service. Is Stakewise OS ETH then always a little bit lower yield than, for example, maybe other more?
Well, it's the average. It's the average across all the different pools, right? So like
Right.
the way that I understand it, Dio, is that you have like each individual vault. So you can stake into any vault, but you don't actually have to mint the LSD once you stake into the vault.
That's correct.
That if you just want to put your ETH somewhere, have it be staked, then that's fine. The OS ETH token is almost like a debt token that you take against your ETH that's been staked. I don't know if it would be considered a swap because you still have your ETH that is in the vaults here.
Wouldn't be a swap.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a swap, which might be better for tax purposes, really, because we're not going to get on that subject here, but swaps versus borrows are treated differently.
Yeah,
at a base level, and so like you can choose like what I thought was cool was that you could have these public pools, so you have your Stakewise V. I did want to bring this up, right? So you guys just moved to V3, but the pool is called V2.
Yeah, this is the legacy pool that we have.
So is there going to be a V3 pool?
Well, you see, this is a legacy pool that we moved onto the V3 kind of architecture. So previously we would collect all the deposits into one pool, and this is what has been migrated onto the V3 rails. But since we now have a marketplace, we essentially have enough node operators on there to only have just one vault and not create, I guess, too much competition with the protocol itself. So the V2 pool is kind of like the legacy pool in which people who have previously been staking with us continue staking. And then some people, if they want to add stake to it, then they certainly can. But yeah, since we have a plethora of node operators and vault options now in the marketplace, this is not necessarily the place where they will deposit. So
yeah. Well, coming back to what I was talking about, what I liked about Stakewise deal was that, like, let's say you have a like an institution that wants to have a private pool, they can contact an infrastructure provider who can then set that up through Stakewise, deploy the vault, and then the institution can stake privately, where they're the only one staking into that pool with them, with maybe pre-agreed on fees or maybe no fees since it's a private pool, and then if they want to. Once they've staked, then they can mint the OSE against it. They can create that debt. And
that's
so,
right.
yeah. And so there looks to be a lot more modularity when it comes to Stakewise. The ability to have custom agreements between the validators and the stakers, which you really don't see anywhere else, right? Rocket Pool has this kind of like general, like, everything's generalized across the entire protocol. There is no ability to have these like private pools or granularity when it comes to fees. Everything's just fixed according to what the protocol decides. Frax is moving towards like a dynamic interest rate market, but you won't have that granularity as well too. Again, it's just generalized. Here with Stakewise, you can have like custom tailored individual vaults that really match what the staker wants and what the validator is able to provide.
Yeah,
that's absolutely correct. Yeah, it's kind of like a middleware for liquid staking, really, but it can be even more than that with the marketplace, with, I guess, some of the integrations we can do on top, something like communities needing to, or the community members being required to stake in the vault in order to get access to, let's say, premium information in the community, kind of like a subscription model where you stake to subscribe. And all the potential to do charity donations through staking on like charities nodes, and DAOs staking their own treasury on their own nodes, flocks of solo stakers becoming essentially one through a DVT solution and posing as essentially a node operator to attract stake from people who are concerned about network centralization and so forth. The beauty is that we open up a whole new kind of design set for the infrastructure, while we keep the most sort of costly and difficult part of operating a liquid staking protocol kind of unified across all these infrastructure options. So we think it's way more efficient, and it's also good for the network.
Yeah.
And how would you kick out nodes if the performance, let's say, falls below like 80% or something?
Mm-hmm.
How would that work? For there's one node with 97. Okay, that's still fine, I guess.
Yeah, well, the thing is that we don't really kick them out. We see this as essentially a marketplace where if people see that their node is underperforming, and it might even be dragging down the performance of OSC, but ultimately it's still people's yield that's being affected. They're just going to reallocate to a healthier, sort of more performant node. So we kind of do anticipate that there's going to be, some friction like this. Maybe actually on the other side, where some nodes are just consistently very performant and are producing a very high yield, and this kind of drags up the yield of ORCEIF because they influence the average yield across the platform. But some of the nodes are not keeping up. We actually anticipate that maybe this was going to be a more problematic situation, but at least so far has been running without hiccups.
Yeah. No, I really like the idea of having these like custom tailored pools that institutional clients can come in and set up, so they can essentially have their own agreements with whomever's staking into it. I mean, I haven't seen that anywhere else. This idea of a private pool, which then is enabled by the OSETH token to create debt against it. So you could have a privately agreed setup between institutional infrastructure provider and someone with a large amount of ETH that wants to have their own staking setup with various guarantees, or maybe they're pursuing different AVS strategies, and then they run that through Stakewise.
That's correct.
Yeah. So maybe we can talk quickly about the integrations. So we had Balancer on, where you guys have deployed the majority of the capital for liquidity for OSETH. I also saw a curve pool for OSETH and RETH together. So maybe you can talk about those quickly.
Yeah, for sure. So the pool that we have on Balancer, I guess, is the kind of premier OSETH pool where the pair is against ETH. It's already, I believe, the third largest pool on mainnet on Balancer when you look at the total value locked. And really, this is your vanilla liquid staking kind of farm where the assets are very closely linked together in terms of their actual price, and you keep the staking yield of the LST that you provide to the pool, all the while earning some additional incentives from the Balancer protocol and from Stakewise and Aura once we switch to it. The curve pool is also pretty interesting because it's a pairing between OSETH, which is going to be pretty decentralized, already a pretty decentralized token with over 25 operators present in our marketplace. And it's paired against, I guess, the most decentralized LST at this time, Arif. And I guess more importantly, both are supported by solo stakers. So in this regard, being in the sort of OSETH Arif farm is like taking the most out of the decentralized options out there on mainnet. We also have a pool on Uniswap. So this is something that's only been open since last Friday, and the pair there is against USDC. I believe this is more of a niche opportunity where because of the volatility of ETH against USDC, it may not be for the faint-hearted. But at least currently, we've tried to see if that kind of the equation works in favor of the LPs of that pool. And we also have an integration with OPM Finance where people can use OSETH as collateral for covered call strategy. So this is a strategy where you receive periodic weekly payments in ETH for as long as ETH stays below a certain price, and if ETH reaches a certain price, I believe this week it's set at $2,900, then you're essentially sold out of your staked ETH position at that price. So it's kind of introducing a cap, like an upside to the upside that you have on ETH, and taking a bet that you're actually never going to reach this upside cap and being paid for taking that bet. So that's available on OPM Finance. Naturally, on Monday, next Monday, we'll have the EigenLayer integration go live. And then we're waiting for a Redstone Oracle to be completed in order to start the integrations on the lending front. So some of the protocols that allow borrowing stables against LSDs that are out there, we have been in good discussions with them about enabling these opportunities for OSEF. And so as soon as the Redstone Oracle is ready, I believe it will be the prime time for us to also enable borrowing for OSEF.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up the Eigenlayer edition. So you guys actually won the vote that they had about adding new LSDs to Eigenlayer. And congratulations on that. So what's the cap for that?
Thank you. Yeah, the cap for that is significant. It's 200,000 ETH per individual LST, so including OSEF. So at most 200,000 OSEF can be deposited. Sorry, ETH worth 200,000 ETH worth of OSEF, because OSEF is a repricing token. Can be deposited into Eigenlayer, but only as long as we're staying below a kind of global cap on all the LSTs that is set at 500,000 ETH worth of LSTs. But yeah, the Eigenlayer announcement was certainly good news. We were not expecting the integration to come so soon. And while we did expect that the integration is going to be completed in waves, where Stakewise is going to be kind of in the next wave of integrations just on its own, based on the fact that we won the contest, we're actually okay with this being with the LSTs being introduced all at once, because it really shows that Eigenlayer is pushing hard to ship their kind of mainnet product and like the actual restaking capabilities quickly, and we're supportive of that. We're looking forward to the AVS's development, and we're going to be developing our own stuff to support that in vaults.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, we're at the top of the hour, so we'll wrap it up here. Kirill, thank you for coming on today and letting us know about the recent upgrade to V3. It's great to hear what you guys are building at Stakewise, and we'll be keeping track as you guys launch more features and become more integrated with Eigenlayer.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Dio. Thank you, Sam.
Great. So thanks everybody at home as well too. Make sure to subscribe. I think we're almost at in some milestones for viewers and watchers. You can always watch us on YouTube. We're also on Spotify as well too, and Apple Podcasts. And make sure to join the Telegram channel. And we will be back tomorrow. We have Chris from Badger, who is coming on to talk about Badger V2, and very excited for that. So see you all tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. We just got to 900 subscribers actually.
Hey, that's great.
That's
and
good. Thank you all, guys. Much respect. Really appreciate the audience. Honestly, it's I think the most fun element within the whole thing that we're doing here all these months. I think it's honestly the feedback by the community and allowing people like Kirill and Stakewise and Fernando from Balancer to share what they're doing, all this amazing work that so many talented teams and builders across the space are doing. Honestly, remarkable. I'm stunned by it.
Well, great. Thank you so much, and we will be back tomorrow.